Hey guys, a bit of a long video here. I usually pride myself on short, bite-sized content, like something that I can easily put out, something you guys can easily watch with no issues at all. But I really feel like hyper-fixating on my Goth Awakening, the Devil May Cry franchise. So, clearly, what I have here is the marking of what I'm going to be talking about today. The DMC extras plus the timeline. So, I can't wait for that. When you don't post in a long time, you just kind of do what you feel like. It's what JonTron does. It's what Internet Historian does. Maybe that's what I do. I don't know. I might get back to doing game reviews, but I don't. Again, I would like to put, at the front of this video that I love the Devil May Cry series. It is possibly my favorite franchise of video games. I have to put this in there because I'm going to be talking shit about the series a little bit, like the cousin that you see at the family reunion that everyone pretends to like, but everyone knows he's just a little bastard. The story of Devil May Cry 1 is quite simple. The basic gist is that 2,000 years ago, a war between humans and demons broke out, and one of the demons took pity on the humans and so decided to fight for them and rebel against the demon overlords, and he became known as the legendary Dark Knight Sparta. Then, 2,000 years later, he fell in love with a human woman, and they created two twin silver-haired sons, Dante and Virgil, very much based off the Divine Comedy. Aside from the backstory, the basic story gist is that Dante, the proprietor of the Devil May Cry shop, is trying to stop a huge evil demon king named Mundus with the assistance of a woman who bears a striking resemblance to his deceased mother. Now, because this is the first game in the series, I'm just going to kind of put it right here. I'm just going to kind of... DMC One. We're just going to put it right there for now. I realize now I should probably mark where Dante's tragic past happens. No spoilers, but definitely spoilers. His mom dies. And I'm just going to put that right here. Okay, so that's right where I'm going to put it. Just right there is where Dante's mom dies. The book! Alright, so the story of the book is about how Tony Redgrave, wink at camera. Wait a minute. Wink at camera. Oh, god damn it! The basic gist of the story is that Tony Redgrave is hanging out at dive bars, and he's taking mercenary jobs. He's fighting a mysterious bandaged man named Gilver, all while getting reprimanded by his new mother figure, a woman named Nell Goldstein, who is a gunsmith who is tired of Dante just completely ruining his guns every time he goes to shoot them. So, this takes place before DMC One, but I will mark it right here. DMC V1. That's for Volume 1, for those who didn't catch that. Now it's time for Devil May Cry 2, Dante's Lobotomy. Now, DMC 2 is actually a really shit game. Has barely any story, but the story basically is 2,000 years ago there was a war between humans and demons, but this time Dante is armed with his Diesel brand clothing and his double-sided coin. That's not even a spoiler, they had a pre-order bonus that was just the two-sided coin. And he's gonna learn a story about his dad after he beats this evil guy. You don't even get to hear the story, it's literally just the story of Sparta again. I am hamming it up just a little bit, but the general story is just, oh, Dante did this in between games. So, to explain my reasoning for this, I will go a bit later into why. DMC 2 will obviously go all the way back here. I know what some of you are saying. I'm gonna address that later. Devil May Cry Volume 2. I hear it's an interesting book, but I did kind of get tired of reading after reading the first one, and I tried to read it immediately afterwards, but the translation was just off to me, so I didn't really have the time to, read it properly. So, because of that, What I do know, though, is that it takes place before Devil May Cry 2. So that's pretty neat. That's where we're going to put it. Now, see, next up is my favorite part of the Devil May Cry series, and that is the Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge video game for the PlayStation 2. Now, I really like this one because it's a continuation of the Nightmare Before Christmas movie, and it is just amazing. It is a good game. It has been worked on, it's been produced by Capcom, then the team that worked together on Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, and DMC 3, they all worked together on this amazing title. It technically predates DMC 3, so that's exactly why I'm putting it on the timeline right here. You could play this game instead of DMC 2 and you would not miss a story beat, so I'm putting... I drew Jack Skellington. I'm very proud of it. The Devil May Cry 3 mangas. The mangas never really were finished. They made 2 mangas that were actually put out and a third one that was supposed to release. But unfortunately they weren't able to finish it for various reasons. With that said, it does take out DMC Volume 1 from the timeline. So... But right now, for the sake of having it all on the timeline, I'm simply just going to put it right here. DMC 3 manga. Boom, Devil May Cry 3 manga. To keep it all on the timeline, we're just DMC 3 manga. Devil May Cry 3. Now see, the story of this game, it's really interesting. It's 2,000 years ago, there was a war between humans and demons, but this time, you get to fight Virgil. And Virgil is probably the coolest antagonist ever. I don't want to spoil the game for you guys, because it is probably my favorite Devil May Cry. It's the one that you play when you want to be really good at math, because that's the tech of the game, is just a lot of math equations that you need to figure out. Especially if you want to play like Dante Must Die mode or something. I'm not good at math, but still my favorite game out of the series. So we're just going to slap that right there. DMC 3. Next up is the Devil May Cry 3 mobile games. Back in olden times, when we still had flip phones, the Nokia brand of phones, they were doing video games, but other brands were also doing phones. They were Java-based. So they made little phone games for your Devil May Cry 3. There was one that was like 3D and another one that was like a 2D beat-em-up style game. Both of them were really interesting. I've played the 2D beat-em-up one via emulation. Yeah, it's alright. But that being said, the story does technically take place before the events of Dante entering the large tower from Devil May Cry 3. So that's why I'm putting DMC 3 phone right there. Next up is Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. That's right, I'm adding Special Editions too, because god damn it. Now, Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition is a really interesting one. Namely because it's just Virgil's campaign when you go to play him. It is just his story from Devil May Cry 3 manga, except in the manga, he doesn't go through all of Dante's levels again. Very interesting choice there, Capcom. I like that money-saving tactic, but goddamn, give Virgil a campaign. So with that said, DMC 3 SE. Boom, Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. Fuck. Next up is the Devil May Cry anime. Now, the Devil May Cry anime it's alright. It's a little boring. You know, can't wait for more people to learn about it, because that's where Patty and Morrison come from Devil May Cry 5. Morrison was white in the anime, though. Anyways, so here, we're just gonna slap this one right there. It comes after the Devil May Cry 1 game, as he is still wearing his outfit from that game. if you wished the Devil May Cry franchise was a little bit more holier, you've come far enough. Because next up is Devil May Cry 4. I'm not going to write it down yet. Now, the basic story of Devil May Cry 4 is that 2,000 years ago, there was a war between humans and demons, but this time, he's regarded as a god, a messiah of sorts, by the Order of the Sword. And one of those who goes to the Order of the Sword, who visits the Church of the Order of the Sword, is a gentleman named Nero. And he is mostly there just so that he can see his not really girlfriend, Kyrie, because she's up there in the choir. But then Dante comes in, and he's a bad guy now for some reason. It's really weird, because Dante's been, like, the main character through all of these, and even this one. So, for some reason, they decided to make him a bad guy in 4. But, of course, we know Dante. But then Nero, throughout the game, gets to discover more about the secrets of the Order of the Sword and the meaning behind his demonic tumor arm. And you find out throughout the game that Nero is actually Devil May Cry 5 spoiler. So we're slapping DMC 4 right there. Deal with it. Next up is Devil May Cry 4 Refrain, the mobile phone game that, let's be honest, I forgot about, and I had to hastily write it in the script yesterday. So, Devil May Cry 4 Refrain. It's an interesting mobile game, you know, it's a phone game, you know, for your touchscreens, back when touchscreens were starting to become a thing. And, you know, game from 2008, you know, it's phone game from 2008, 3D. The only thing that really changes is the fact that Dante gets like 1 or 2 more lines. He actually gets to talk to Kratos, which is really interesting. So I'm just gonna slap it like right around the same time. DMC for Refrain. Next up is what we thought was going to be Devil May Cry 5, but was actually the Devil May Cry reboot. That's right, the shit-ass reboot where Dante's emo for no reason. So, there's a lot of story behind this, a lot of controversy. The general basis of this is that Capcom decided that Devil May Cry 4 did not sell well enough. Now, it sold somewhere in the ballpark of 500,000 units, and it still didn't sell enough for Capcom. Even though Devil May Cry was already just kind of a niche franchise. And so they decided that it would be a good idea to try to appeal to the West. Thank you, KJ Inafune. And Ninja Theory, funnily enough, did not want changes to the franchise, rather wanted to stay closer to Dante's original design. But Capcom kept pushing, and pushing, and pushing, until eventually the Tokyo Game Show trailer of 2010. We thought it was going to be Devil May Cry 5. It was not. It was a weird trailer where Dante has short black hair, an emo fringe, and he chain smoked. Something that was made prevalent in the Devil May Cry Volume 1. He hates smoking. Like really does not like smoking. People were mad. Obviously, people are going to be mad. No one would have thought otherwise. But the thing is, they started sending death threats. And the art director, who just so happens to look an awful lot like Reboot Dante, he decided to fire back through leaked screenshots as well as interviews. He said Dante would get laughed out if he was dressed the way he was in any bar outside of Tokyo. Alright. And he posted on Twitter saying, LOL, your Dante is a gay cowboy, how sad. This is not how you sell a game to fans of the franchise. This is how you lose fans of the franchise. The game finally releases, and it's okay. It's not bad, it's not really good either, though. But DMC, the reboot, got a little bit of changes in there. Dante, for one, bulked up. He got a little bit more muscle mass. He stopped smoking entirely. But it didn't change the fact that he really enjoyed having a bit of a potty mouth. Something that they made sure for DMC One he did not have. The story of this game is that Mundus is bald, Sparta did not save anybody, Sparta actually fell in love with an angel instead of a human, and Dante's emo for no reason, Virgil has a stupid-ass fedora, and admittedly I think the soundtrack is okay. I like the soundtrack, I like Combi Christ. It's a bit wubtastic at times, call it a guilty pleasure. DMC, Virgil's downfall. Now, this is an interesting one, because Devil May Cry Virgil's Downfall was... It gave Virgil a different campaign than Dante. Good on you, Ninja Theory. Honestly, that's really cool, and I wish that they did that for the regular main series. I know they're not going to, but it'd be cool. So, next up on the chopping block is the Devil May Cry reboot comic books. Classic. I've never read them. Then Capcom decided it would be a fun idea to basically set up a poll to see which series would continue. So here's what they said. They said, we will release DMC Definitive Edition, the reboot, and Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. Now, with this said, they did make sure to kind of lean it more in favor of the original series, because they knew that the new one was controversial as shit. What ended up happening was DMC 4 Special Edition ended up selling more. But about DMC Definitive Edition. DMC Definitive Edition changes almost nothing. It gets rid of the fedora. It gets rid of Virgil's stupid-ass fedora, which I think is cool. They removed like a few seconds of like one cutscene, and then added a new cutscene. I find it odd that they couldn't find time to remove the AR demon abortion as performed by Virgil. Point is, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition releases, and it blows the reboot out of the water. So here's where I put it on the timeline. So, you have DMC 4 right here. With DMC 4 Special Edition, you have 3 new playable characters. You have Lady and Trish, and Virgil. Virgil, obviously, gets shafted all the way back here before the events of Devil May Cry 3. He's forced back here, but I call bullshit. Because how the fuck does Virgil from DMC 4 Special Edition have the weapons from 3 if he hasn't gone through the events of 3 yet? Lady and Trish's gameplay, their story mainly is here, so DMC 4 SELT. Boom, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, Lady and Trish. I did forget to mention that there was a book, or 2 books, I guess. DMC 4 Deadly Fortune, and the other one, I forget the name. So, the books take place after the events of 4, and they do explain some stuff that would be for the later game, maybe. But, basically what this is Dante gives Nero a neon sign that means that he will become another proprietor of a Devil May Cry chain. I would like to call this the Age of Confusion, because if we're being truthful here, what the fuck is any of this? What the fuck is all this? Basically, during this time, a lot of people were debating back and forth what was considered canon and what wasn't. The DMC 3142 art book claims that only the games are canon and none of the books are considered in the series. But if you're going to have that information in an art book, I think there's a reason why people were confused. After 10 years of the last DMC release, the last new Devil May Cry release, not including the reboots and special edition, the year of our Lord, 2018, announces a new Devil May Cry in the original timeline. How often does a company do that? And here comes the amazing bit of this, is that once it's announced, they say, okay, get ready guys, we're gonna fuck up the timeline. I knew what you were thinking, angry DMC commenter. You probably already posted a comment mentioning why I didn't write the timeline in the right order. That's because I'm going in order of when the game's released. So, here is what it is. DMC 5 definitively states everything here is considered canonical to the main franchise. And they moved DMC 2 and DMC Volume 2, they moved it before the events of DMC 4. What? The reason this was, and the reason why it was done like this to begin with, was to pretty much push DMC 2 as far back in the timeline as possible, that by the time you decide to play the games in order of story, you've already played the good ones, and you wouldn't be missing anything if you just played the bad one last. So here is how the timeline is structured now. The timeline is now structured like this. I will get a close-up of this later. But don't worry, we have another book on our hands. That's right, Devil May Cry 5 Before the Nightmare takes place right there. DMC 5 BTN. Basic gist is that this explains some of the questions that will need answered in the next one, and maybe even answers something about DMC 2. Why it exists? No, just why the story doesn't make sense. So, DMC 5 Before the Nightmare is also considered... DMC 5 Before the Nightmare, I should probably read it. There's an English translation of the book out there. I have not read it, I probably should. But following that is the best action game on the market today. The best title in the Devil May Cry franchise, definitively, even though I say 3 is better. Devil May Cry 5! Devil May Cry 5! Hands down, the best Devil May Cry title! And don't worry guys, we have one more book, one more manga. It is Devil May Cry 5, The Visions of V, which takes place right in the middle of Before the Nightmare. DMC 5, Visions of V. It basically explains how V ended up where he was at the start of 5. You know, general basis. General idea of where he came from. And how could I be so stupid to ignore the storm that is approaching Virgil? DMC 5 SE. DMC 5 SE takes place basically the same time as 5. I don't know how to explain that one. It doesn't take place during 3 though. I still don't think it makes sense why Virgil has his weapons from 3 since Dante took those, but... Or no, Virgil has one new weapon, but it's just a redoing of another weapon that he had before. DMC 5 SE. And that is the timeline of all the Devil May Crys. God damn it, that was a lot. Alright, I'm gonna go eat a pizza and have some ice cream. I'll come back in a little bit. I'm just have a quick break. Fucking love pizza. I see why Dante eats this every day. The point is, don't try to understand the Devil May Cry timeline. It's confusing. I personally have gripes about it. For example, in DMC 3, Dante's supposed to be 19. But I'm calling that into question because Devil May Cry Volume 1, I believe, claims that he's like in his 20s. And it's placed right there. So some things I guess are canon, but some things aren't. Like Dante's age. But that doesn't make much sense. If Dante is 19 here, then he must be like, I don't know, 13 when he's goes by Tony Redgrave. I don't know how that works. Don't play the games in order of timeline. It's horrible. You're gonna end up hating Devil May Cry 1 because it isn't as advanced as 3. And these two dogs that I have right here really want my pizza. So I think I'm gonna call it. I think I'm gonna take a picture of the timeline. And before you ask, Devil May Cry Pinnacle of Combat, or Peak of Combat, falls nowhere on the timeline because it's fucking stupid! If I were to place it, though, I would say it goes in between DMC 3 and DMC 1, in case you were, you know. But I will say, that game is quite confusing. Why is Dante, at the age of 21, hanging out with Nero, who is 20? His nephew, ladies and gentlemen. The point of all this shit is, I'm tired. I gotta edit this video, and I'm gonna eat more pizza. I see why I take long breaks in between videos. Look at all this shit! And then this is the actual timeline. Pineapple belongs on pizza.